President Trump had enough meeting the press and walked off to the set. Graham Plattner, the dilemma continues to plague Democrats, and they figured out how to steal California again, it appears. It's Monday, June 8th. This is news and commentary from America's Heartland. Welcome in. This is Heartlander News. Hi there, and welcome in to another edition of Heartlander News. I'm Chris Stigall. Hope you're keeping up to date on all the latest news and headlines every day, all week long. Heartlandernews.com. We talk a lot, and we have been since this show started, about fraud and accountability. Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of Agriculture, talked about it again recently on Fox News.
We sent a letter to every governor in America. No one had ever held the states accountable. The federal government funds the food stamp program. We send hundreds of millions of dollars a day to the states, but there'd never been a back end accountability on how is that money getting spent. So we asked all the states to partner with us. It's time to have accountability. The red states, of course, did. And with that red state data, we found 200,000 dead people getting food stamps. We found 500,000 people that were getting more than one benefit. And y'all, this was in the red states. The blue states wouldn't give us the data. They're suing us. We're in massive litigation right now, looking to cut those funds off until they give us that data. But the fraud is so rampant and so stunning that when the president, the vice president, and our team talks about, when we can root all this fraud out, we're going to really be able to cut the deficit, make sure we're protecting the taxpayer, but also make sure we're protecting the families that rely on these programs at the same time and by getting the fraud out.
For most of my life, and I suppose if you're of a certain age, yours too, one of the things that I've been eternally frustrated by, more than just about anything else, is the total lack of accountability in government. I know you say that regularly. It's what I hear almost all the time. More than anything else, voters are frustrated that no one is held accountable. If money disappears from your business, heads roll. If fraud should drain your bank account, investigators show up. I mean, heck, if you have a fraudulent charge pop up on your bank card, what happens? You're alerted immediately. But taxpayer dollars, those just vanish into the federal bureaucracy. We're told not to worry our pretty little heads about it. And year after year, the reports roll in, just like Secretary Rollins said. Waste, fraud, abuse, checks to dead people, benefits for people who don't qualify. And what happens? Maybe a hearing, maybe a press release, maybe a stern report, and then everybody shrugs and moves on. I get the sense that's finally starting to change. Accountability is quickly becoming one of the defining themes of President Trump's second term. We're seeing it in spending. We're seeing it in fraud investigations. Vice President J.D. Vance, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, they're leading a series of pushes to root out waste across all federal programs. And they're using AI to do what has never been thought possible before at scale. And that's making sure the money is going to real people, real addresses, for real needs. The numbers, as Secretary Rollins said, are staggering. Estimates of annual waste, fraud, and improper payments run from over $500 billion to nearly $1 trillion a year. Hundreds of billions just walking out the back door while Congress fights for weeks over a few billion here or a few billion there. Every stolen or wasted dollar has to be borrowed, taxed, or printed. And that's a huge reason deficits explode, the debt climbs, interest payments swallow more of the budget. Stop the bleeding, and you suddenly open the door to lower deficits, tax relief, getting inflation under control. But accountability doesn't stop at the money. It's becoming a government principle across the board. If taxpayers deserve to know where their money went, voters deserve to know exactly how their votes are counted too. If government agencies should be audited, election systems should be transparent too, shouldn't they? For instance, what we see going on in Los Angeles right now. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and the Democrat Rahman are projected to face off to lead the second largest city in November with 87% of the votes in. This election is days old now, and they still have 13% of the vote to count. And suddenly, out of nowhere, Spencer Pratt, who was leading, is now suddenly trailing. And almost all of the mail-in votes that have come in since Election Day have gone against Spencer Pratt and have helped the Democrats. So what are we talking about here? A total lack of transparency, clearly, in California. Anybody looking at who these votes are, where they're coming from? Are they being audited? Are they being watched in a bipartisan way? I doubt it. Asking tough questions about hundreds of billions in spending, or where thousands and thousands of ballots are coming from, it means we ought to be asking and should be willing to ask tough questions about the processes to decide who governs us and how these processes work. That's not a partisan thing. That's just basic accountability, folks. Yet the media refuses to demand it, especially when it involves Democrats. They've become the PR arm of the Democrat Party. They're not journalists. I mean, look at what Kristen Welker from Meet the Press did with President Trump. In fact, we have it here. This is why President Trump ultimately got so angry and walked off the set. Kristen Welker refused to even hear or entertain or talk with President Trump about the 2020 election and the fraud that's going on. She just outright dismissed it, and President Trump had enough. Aaron, give me number 237 here.
Stupid Biden. He's not smart enough to know what's going on. But people that surrounded him, surrounded his beautiful, resolute desk in the Oval Office, what they did to the lives of people, they destroyed people. They sent people to jail who did nothing wrong.
Just to be very clear, there's no evidence of what you're saying. But let me ask you about Todd Blanche.
Listen to me. Listen to me.
Let's talk
There's
about Todd
tremendous
Blanche.
evidence. There's nothing but evidence. The election was rigged. It was a dirty election.
Mr.
And it's
President,
happening again right now in California.
Presented evidence.
It's happening
that the
right now in California. Right now, it's look at what's
Where's
happening
the
in California.
To that?
It's
the
4
Republicans
days.
are doing well in
California. It's no, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days, and they aren't even close to coming up with.
That's how they count.
You know why they're doing that? Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support
all
that?
I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen to people, and let's see what happens.
But sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes.
Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
really.
Let's
well,
continue.
You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But Mr. President,
you know why I got that? Because you have no credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd.
You have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk about
your elections in this country. We're like a third world country. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC and CBS. And CNN.
But Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain with you.
I know.
I traveled all the way to Wisconsin. On and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr. President,
a country can never be great with a dishonest
Listen,
press.
we traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
We traveled all the way to Wisconsin, bless Kristen Welker's heart. It must have been so uncomfortable for her to leave the Beltway studio and travel to, Wisconsin. By the way, welcome into Heartlander News, Kristen. This is where we call home, and this is where we live, and we like it here. Thank you very much. We traveled all the way to Wisconsin, all the way. What was it, a 2.5-hour flight? Anyway, that's Kristen Welker from Meet the Press, and President Trump clearly fed up. Instead of pressing for real answers, What did she do? She spent the time acting like a defense attorney for California's slow, opaque vote counting. I mean, the red flags are everywhere, obviously, counting dragging on for days and weeks. And she has the temerity to lecture about trust the process. She completely ignored real corruption. The fact that 26 FBI informants were on the scene on January 6th. Serious, unanswered questions that still surround that day. The fact that Pennsylvania did not want that election certified on that day because of the phony way the votes were tallied and counted. Tens of thousands of votes were incorrectly counted for Joe Biden that shouldn't have been in Georgia, we now know, by their own admission. Americans were wronged in 2020. We've seen settlements paid to victims' families, including Ashley Babbitt's family, receiving nearly $5 million. This was an abuse of power like we've rarely seen, and yet somebody like Kristen Welker treats the president like he's some kind of criminal on trial, while giving the media's favorite narrative a complete pass. Not even a little bit of curiosity from Welker there. Meanwhile, President Trump, undeterred, has cleaned up D.C. He's dramatically reduced crime. He's closed the border. He's delivered strong jobs numbers. He's boosted energy production. He's secured great trade deals. He sparked a manufacturing boom, and he has slashed fraud. Success after success after success. And yet people like Kristen Welker and much of the media treats him like a hostile witness. And why? Because the media has become an accomplice in shielding Democrats from any real scrutiny at all. They scream, "Threat to democracy," while helping bury the very transparency that democracy requires. For decades, Washington's unofficial motto was simple: don't ask too many questions. And then Trump's age of accountability showed up and rejected that entire mindset. Whether it's taxpayer dollars, government agencies, public records, or even the election and the administration of the election, the answer simply cannot be any longer because we said so. The new standard has to be transparency. The new standard has to be follow the money. The new standard has to be audit the books. We have to have a standard that says find the fraud and hold people accountable for it. Look, if government works for the American people deserve to know where their money goes. And by the way, how their votes are counted. We deserve to see those things and know fully. That is not a radical notion, ladies and gentlemen. That is not a partisan notion. That's what responsible government is supposed to be. This has been as evident as it can be when you look at what's going on over at CBS News. I've had a little fun with the fact that Scott Pelley, the haughty, H-A-U-G-H-T-Y, Scott Pelley, who has walked away, I guess fired from CBS News after fighting and screaming and insulting his new bosses, he's now granted an interview. He's mad that the new direction of CBS News doesn't allow for this blanket, blind, partisan hatred of Donald Trump anymore. He's mad about it, and now he's going on a media tour to discuss his new bosses and how angry he is about it. This is critical to understand. It's not just a personality thing we're covering here. I'm actually showing you institutional media like Kristen Welker, like Scott Pelley, and the way they're writhing and hissing as people who understand where the electorate is. Barry Weiss may not be a conservative by any means, who's now running the CBS News division, and this guy that she hired to run 60 Minutes. I'm not suggesting they're conservatives. I am suggesting, though, they're aware that journalism has gone off the rails, if it ever was there at CBS News, and in order to get some kind of viewership and trust back, they've got to appear at least somewhat willing to scrutinize Democrats and not just blindly, in a partisan way, attack Donald Trump. And for this, guys like partisans like Scott Pelley or Leslie Stahl and all those old fossils from 60 Minutes, they've been furious. And they're quitting and walking off and giving interviews about how disappointed they are. Well, it's because the game is up. So anyway, here's the haughty Scott Pelley giving his first interview since he was fired from CBS News for attacking his new boss for not being anti-Trump enough. Let's listen to some of this, just so you understand who these people are. They're telling us who they are in real time, and it's instructive.
Do you think Barry Weiss needs to be removed?
Oh, gosh, yes. Look, she's a lovely person. And her free press organization that she founded has been very successful. She's proven that. Great for her. But television's not her thing. She brings an ideology into CBS News where that is just anathema. And so it's a terrible fit. It's probably not her fault, but it's just a terrible fit. She doesn't know television. She doesn't understand how it works. She doesn't have management experience for a large organization like CBS News. So yes, I do think that we would be far better off without her. Maybe she goes back to the free press and has a sterling career. But this is like somebody walking up to me and saying, there's a 747. There are 400 people on it. We need you to fly it to Paris. I'm going to decline because I don't have a clue. And it would have been so much better if Barry Weiss had been offered this job and said, oh, that's not for me. I don't know how to do that.
What an arrogant putz. Just an arrogant putz. You know, look, I grant you that there are certain things about broadcasting. There are certain things that, skills you acquire over years. Having done this myself for, 30 years plus now, you pick up some things along the way. It's true. There's some things about the business to learn. That's true. But do you understand, to most people, how completely ridiculous and arrogant it sounds? Some stuffed shirt, blow-dried anchor guy says that his work on television is too sophisticated for the likes of this Barry Weiss. She's a lovely person, and I'm sure she's fine with her little journalist thing that went really well for her. But this is television. This is television. No one's impressed with you, Scott. People are watching guys in their basement wearing headsets, and they're getting 10 times the viewership you were getting on 60 Minutes. You don't hear them saying, this is YouTube. You don't understand. That's the problem, you puffed up jackass. No one needs to understand the sophistication that you supposedly bring because no one needs it anymore. You're a fossil. I don't know what does that like say? That's like, no one understands the sophistication of what it takes to guide a stagecoach with a team of horses. Not just anybody can hop into a stagecoach, take the reins, and steer a team of horses in a stagecoach. And rightly, everyone would go, well, true, I've never guided a team of horses in a stagecoach, but I could also just get in the car, Scott. Anyway, here's a little more of the haughty, puffed up, bottom-jawed Scott Pelley. Now out of a job, by the way, so I guess all he's got left to do is go on the media tour circuit and complain, which is really attractive. Here we go.
My hope is that the leadership of Paramount will say to themselves, okay, this isn't working. We have broadcasts that almost don't get on the air. We have respected journalists saying that there is a thumb on the scale for one political party over another. We have a broadcast which is among the most important in America, the most successful in the history of all of television. It was doing great. So why are we making these changes? We need adult supervision. And at the moment, we don't have it. We have people who've been installed in these jobs who, through no fault of their own, have no experience in television. It's not their fault. but they don't know what they're doing. And there's a subtle political bias that I've never seen at 60 Minutes before. And so, or at CBS News before. And so that is my hope, a return to sanity, a return to honor, a return to courage. We used to have all of those things in abundance.
Yes.
And now we don't.
Honor, courage.
We can save this.
Yes.
It's possible to land this plane.
Yes.
But right now,
Jaws coming out.
CBS News, in my view, is on fire.
Oh, my. It's a very dramatic. CBS News is on fire. What a pompous jackass. I got to tell you something, folks. My blood pressure rises just watching this jackass. What a pompous, puffed up windbag. Have you ever heard such dreck in your life? And he believes it. Respected journalists are complaining that there is a thumb on the scale. There is a bias that we have never seen before. Oh, is that a fact, Scott? Because we've seen the bias for decades. We've watched that crap show, tick, 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 after football. We've seen the bias. Never seen it before. It's because it was your bias. And so when you're not allowed to regularly deploy your bias, that then to you is a thumb on the scale. Whereas actual journalists say, hey, I don't know that you're looking at that objectively and fairly. You can't just say that without looking at the other side of it. And they say, that's thumb on the scale. Well, no, it's actually taking your thumb off the scale and looking at it objectively. But it tells you everything you need to know about these people when he says, this is the most important news program that's ever existed in the history of the world. And they don't know what they're doing. It's on fire. No one cares more about this institution than I. And it is the most important in the world. If you walked down the street today and asked 10 people, what is the most important, and use that word, what is the most important media outlet in the country? Do you think a one of them, serious question now, do you think a one of them would say, in fact, try this at a barbecue, kind of a lame parlor trick, but try it. Go to your family gathering or your next barbecue and just ask 5 people, what's the most important news program out there? What's the most important source for news out there today? You know what you're going to get? Probably 5 to 10 different answers. And I guarantee you none of them are going to say, 60 Minutes? I never miss 60 Minutes. Aaron, when was the last time you watched Tick, 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 Tick? When did you ever watch it? You're younger than me. Did you ever watch that show?
No, but I watch football.
You do, and so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Coming up after this game wraps up, tick, 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 Leslie Stahl sits down and grills President Trump. That's the only time you've ever heard of 60 Minutes, isn't it? Football?
Mm-hmm.
It's the most important news program ever in the history of all news programs. No one cares. All right, a little more. And this, again, this just proves the reason I play this for you is because it's instructive as to who these jackasses are, what they think of themselves, the game they've been playing, and why they're so angry. They don't think anybody is more important than them. Nobody can do what they do, and they're heroes. They tell themselves they're actual heroes on par with. Aaron has also served in the United States military, so let's just see if he's impressed by wartime correspondent Scott Pelley here. Here we go.
Stupid, I can take that. Stiff, yeah, probably. Don't care about the country. I've never worn the uniform, but I've been in combat for this country in Afghanistan and Iraq, Kuwait, been shot at, spent nights in foxholes filling up with water in the desert. I'm not aware that the President of the United States has ever done any of those things for his country? Please correct me if I'm wrong. You become a journalist because you love the First Amendment. You become a journalist because you love the country. And while all the other descriptions that the president used about me might be applicable, not that one. There is no democracy without journalism. It can't be done. And that is why I am a journalist.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to subject you to this, but it's important you see it. So, Aaron, as a guy who enlisted, you've served the country. I don't know that you've seen combat. I
have not.
But you probably know people that have, I assume.
Yeah.
So, does Scott Pelley impress you there?
No, he kind of reminds me of like when you are at those barbecues or functions and someone finds out that you were in the military and they want to like bond with you and tell you about how they almost joined and why they couldn't at that time. You know,
and to be clear, I've never served. I've certainly never seen any combat at all. But I do wonder, like when he tells the story of I've been in foxholes, like guys that have been shot at. I wonder, do they think that guy's impressive? Serious question.
No.
Do they put it on par at all?
No. Also, foxholes in the desert don't really fill with water, do they? Like just the desert itself, doesn't it like not have water?
Well, that's a great point. Maybe a journalist ought to interview Scott Pelley and ask that. You'll remember that Brian Williams famously years ago got himself out of a job. He got kicked off the NBC nightly news and got banished to what was then MSNBC, the former anchor, because he lied. He just flatly lied on Letterman, telling this story about how he was shot at while flying into, I think it was Iraq, to cover it or something. And it was a totally made up story. The guy that flew Brian Williams into Iraq said that never happened. And he had to confess that my memory was a little shoddy. These guys tell themselves they are really something special. And that's what's so amazing. D-Day was this weekend. And, I'll play this because I'm not really sure where else I would, but it's a great reminder because you want to talk about heroes. How about kids, underage kids who lied just so they could serve to be a part of World War II? The number of people we lost, teenagers, 16, 17, 18 years of age, storming the beaches of Normandy to save the world from a Nazi march across Europe. What they did in Normandy, I'll tell you something, D-Day, if you ever get the chance, go to Normandy. I'd like to ask Scott if he's ever gone. I'm sure he probably has, since he's been so many places as an important journalist. Go to Pointe de Houx and look at those cliffs and think of those Army Rangers scaling those cliffs or those young boys jumping off those boats into shallow water, storming up the beach while Nazis are standing on the cliff shooting at them. It's like a turkey shoot. It was an unbelievable feat of bravery. You can read about, you can hear about, and still not fully appreciate until you go to Normandy and actually see the physical scene where the bodies of these heroes are buried, and you see the actual cliffs, and you really start to consider what the balls, quite frankly, on these men it took to pull off D-Day. That's heroism. Not what Scott Pelley does, whatever the hell it is he thinks he did. But anyway, here's Pete Hegseth on D-Day in Normandy. I just thought this appropriate since we just commemorated that over the weekend here. 82nd anniversary, I believe. 87th? I got to check my math. Anyway, here's Pete Hegseth.
America will lead, and we must. But capable allies must be right there with us, shoulder to shoulder, in the breach, when it matters. In the years since these beaches, much of the West, in some places, in some quarters, and in some capitals, grew comfortable, we forgot that freedom is not free. We forgot that peace is not wished into being. It is bought with purpose, with honor, and with strength. The men who landed on these beaches knew this. The question we ask ourselves is, do we? It's past time we remember what they knew. Their legacy demands far more than quiet reflection. It requires our active vigilance. Sadly, today, different European beaches are stormed by different dangerous ideologies. Beaches in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, and Bulgaria. Boats and men arrive. When will European capitals do something about that invasion? Or is it too late? I pray not, and I believe not. The men who fought and died here restored freedom to Europe. That freedom must be maintained by this generation of leaders and warfighters, or what they fought for was merely temporary. As our great president Ronald Reagan once said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. You don't pass it to the next generation in the bloodstream. It must be defended by each and every generation. We stand by our allies, and we expect our allies capable and ready to stand alongside us. The heroes of 1944 did that, and may we.
Beautifully said from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth on the 82nd, I was right the first time, 82nd anniversary of D-Day. That's real heroism. Scott Pelley ain't even close, but boy, he tells himself he is. That is a guy who thinks of himself as special. I mean, when you bring yourself to tears thinking about your own heroism, he's a bore. It's, anyway, one more and then I will move off of this. Bill Maher was talking with the Democrat hack Senator Chris Murphy about 60 Minutes, because this propaganda arm, again, tick, 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 tick after football. Football's the most watched thing still in the country. And so tick, tick, tick was the one bit of propaganda that they still kind of had a foothold on. And CBS effectively blew that up. Paramount and CBS and their big merger here recently, they put Barry Weiss in. So this, for them, football was the entree into their propaganda arm. It was really sort of the last vestige of it. That's what Pelley and all these people are so upset about. So is Murphy with Bill Maher here. Take a listen to this. Bill Maher absolutely torching him on this front.
It's a big charge that you just made. That 60 Minutes itself and CBS itself is now completely MAGA. I don't see it that way.
Completely MAGA.
Well, that's kind of what you said.
But he is clearly intent
yes.
on installing people who will tell his story.
Oh, of course.
And will keep his critics off the air.
But let me ask you this question. I watch 60 Minutes every week. I've had since I was a kid. If I didn't hear all the buzz in the media, if I didn't read about it all the time, would I ever notice that it was any different? I don't think I would.
Yeah, it's not just 60 Minutes, and part of it is you don't know what they choose not to. You don't know what they choose not to air.
That's true too.
Part of what the allegation is that they are killing stories that would be embarrassing for the president. So it's hard to know what you're missing in a censorship environment.
But I've seen ones that are not very favorable to the president.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I don't know if I would have noticed any different if I hadn't been reading about it. Also, I just don't think being a 60 Minutes correspondent is that hard. I don't feel like Scott Pelley was a national treasure. Companies change hands all the time. I never liked them. Sorry, I just never did.
There you go. Thank you. Bill Maher and I don't agree on much, but look at that. You see, somebody can become such a pompous windbag and jackass that it actually brings Americans together. Thank you, Scott Pelley. We owe you a debt of gratitude. Scott Pelley has managed to bring me, Chris Stigall from Heartlander News, a conservative from America's Heartland, together with a left coast, left wing, Los Angeles atheist. He and I agree. Scott Pelley's value is whoosh. Now, in Scott Pelley's mind, he's the most valuable human being ever doing the most important work ever. And that takedown was epic. And I'm so glad it came from him, not just me. That makes me feel better. That's going to start my week off well. Interesting piece from Axios today. Republican-led states have redrawn enough congressional districts to force Democrats to outperform their 2024 national results by nearly 5 percentage points if they want to retake the House. Control of the House will shape whether Trump will be allowed to govern largely unchecked, says Axios, during his final 2 years. Democrats need to flip 3 seats to win the House, assuming vacancies return to the parties that last held them. Before the redistricting push, Democrats needed to outrun Kamala Harris's 2024 margins by 3.1 points. Now they need to outrun it by 4.9. Put another way, the new maps are worth nearly 2 extra points to Republicans in the national margin. Democrats have an almost 6-point advantage over Republicans on the generic congressional ballot as of June 7th. But the redistricting push has eaten away at that. And so there's a real shot, more so than I think anybody ever first thought, that Republicans could, in fact, hang on. And this would be something historic. I mean, you can't fill one hand with the number of times that a party that's been in total control of the White House, House, and Senate in a president's first 2 years, that at least one of those houses didn't change hands. It hasn't happened historically, I think, more than 3 times. And reports are it could well happen. And why? Well, I mean, Democrats aren't exactly offering their best. We've gone over this before. Graham Plattner continues to haunt the Democrats. John Fetterman, the one Democrat who's actually unafraid to speak up and call Graham Plattner what he is. Of course, this is the guy with the Nazi tattoo, had the Nazi tattoo for 12 years on his chest, says he had no idea what it was, even though his girlfriend and other people were talking about it being a Nazi tattoo. He didn't know. But when he finally found out 12 years later that on a drunken night that he thought something looked cool and tattooed it on his chest, he only found out 12 years later that it was a Nazi tattoo. He covered it up with something else. Then, of course, there were allegations of it being rough with women. Allegations of him exposing himself on social media. Again, they're allegations, of course, but extensively written about, and not in full, as I understand it, in the New York Times, among other places. Here's John Fetterman, one Democrat, probably the only one, who's actually willing to call him out because he realizes how poisonous he is, not just to the Democrat Party, but really to all of politics. I mean, if you thought John Fetterman and his hoodie was objectionable and sort of lowering the bar for the United States Senate, bring in a guy like Graham Plattner, who can't keep his pants on and likes to tattoo Nazi paraphernalia on his chest. Here's Fetterman in number 238.
He's lied to America. He lied to my colleagues in the Senate just later this week for now trying to pretend that none of those things aren't true. But that's exactly where we are.
Okay, here's my theory. My theory is that with each of these revelations, with your Democratic colleagues, it actually enhances his stature in this strange way. Because they, for lack of a better descriptor, they want a junkyard dog. They want a street fighter who's willing to knee President Trump in the groin if given the choice. And that's if given the option. And that's the way he presents himself.
No. Being a dirtbag is not authentic. You know, being a dirtbag is being a dirtbag. You know, he's lied to America.
Being a dirtbag is being a dirtbag. Pretty simple, plainly put. James Carville, though, and other Democrats, Fetterman's about the only one that's willing to tell us the truth about Graham Plattner. He doesn't want him in their ranks, but the other Democrats, they feel like he's best positioned. And look, right now, according to certain polls, if you believe it, from Just the News, this guy, Graham Plattner, leads Susan Collins in Maine. Embraced by the party's progressive wing, the Senate Majority PAC announced in late May that it plans to spend $31 million in TV ads backing Plattner's bid to unseat Collins. $31 million that they're going to a PAC is going to spend to get this guy elected. Democrat and oyster farmer Graham Plattner continues to outpoll incumbent Susan Collins despite mounting controversies. As of Friday, Real Clear polling average for a November matchup between Plattner and Collins shows him at 7.4% ahead of Susan Collins. And again, I would need to see the polling on this thing. And I'm not exactly a Susan Collins fan, mind you. It's been pretty frustrating, in fact. We'll get to the SAVE Act in just a minute. Susan Collins, again, helped torpedo that over the weekend. So she's not making it easy for those of us that would like to see Graham Plattner defeated. But the Democrats are foursquare behind this guy. Here's James Carville, again, standing tall for the Nazi-decorated Graham Plattner.
The more I think about the Graham Plattner thing, the more that I see that he has value. Okay, Graham Plattner had 4 combat deployments. I don't think that, I don't want to diagnose someone, but we have to assume that that has had some residual effect on him. Somebody says PTSD, I don't know.
Clearly,
Shell
yeah.
shock. But you know what all those 4 wars have in common? Susan Collins was for all 4. Maybe it would not be the worst thing. Maybe if you were voting for governor and you had to have instant judgment or stability, maybe it's actually an affirmatively good thing that we have a combat veteran who is affected by the rigors and horror of combat on the floor of the United States Senate, serving on the Veterans Affairs Committee, serving on the Committee for Mental Health. I think that the walk that this guy has taken is a walk, is in some ways a noble walk.
Noble. Okay, so they have decided to whitewash this guy's story as nothing more than PTSD. And I'm not dismissing the severity of PTSD, of course, but if you believe that Graham Plattner's behavior is exclusively tied to PTSD, then I got a bridge to sell you. The guy's an anti-Semite. He decorated his chest with it. That's not PTSD, folks. A growing number of Jewish Democrats tell Axios they feel shunned, like unwelcome strangers in their own party. Well, gee, why might that be? As the Democrats cheerlead a Nazi sympathizer, they warn that the constant and escalating hostilities over Israel's actions in Gaza have at times veered into hostility toward Jewish Americans. A large majority of Jewish Americans vote Democrat anyway. Any shifts among Jewish voters who feel alienated from the party could impact the 2028 election. I've never understood why Jews vote Democrat. Most of them do. Pretty frustrating. The party's internal tension over Israel is rising at a time when Democrat leaders like Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, J.B. Pritzker and Rahm Emanuel and Elisa Slotkin are potential contenders for president in 2028. I didn't know the Shoney's big boy was a Jew. Did you know that, J.B. Pritzker, the Shoney's big boy? I had no idea. Didn't know he was Jewish. Okay, that's interesting. Polls show support for Israel's government for decades, a matter of bipartisan agreement, have fallen sharply among Democrats. Well, again, if you're Jewish and you still support this party, they're quite literally proud to defend and possibly elect and fund a guy who decorates his own chest for over a decade before he says, I had no idea. I mean, it's, anyway, here's more. Ro Khanna, Mr. Moderate, the guy out there in California who's come across the aisle and voted with Republicans on this and that. Everybody loves Ro Khanna because he's Mr. Moderate. Anyway, here's what he says about Graham Plattner.
There's nothing credible at this point.
My view is that even according to the New York Times piece, they said there was no harm, no injury. There was toxicity, and there was verbal intimidation, which I condemn. But Graham has made it clear that there was no evidence of violence. That, to me, is a red line.
Aha. So there was no harm, no injury. There was toxicity and verbal intimidation. I see. So you see, you can be, you can sternly yell and scream at your wife. You can lock her behind a closed door. You can pin her arm behind her. Aaron, congratulations. We are now given clearance from Ro Khanna. We men apparently can start handling women as long as we show no outward signs of injury to them.
Mm-hmm.
How would that work for you and your wife, do you suppose?
Yeah.
You can tell her that Ro Khanna says, as long as you don't hurt her, there's no visible signs of injury, you can do whatever you damn well please to her.
I don't think so.
I don't think that's a legal standard. I don't know. I think you're right. Don't try that at home, gentlemen. Not a legal standard by which I think we ought to hold ourselves. Unbelievable, but totally believable too. Here's Graham Plattner himself in give me number 41 here.
If I had my way, elections would last 2 months. They would be publicly funded. And if a billionaire looked at a TV ad the wrong way, we'd put him in jail.
Huh? I don't even understand what that is. If he had it his way, elections would last 2 months, I'm sure. I mean, Eric Swalwell, if he had it his way, he said elections would be something we could do over our cell phones. Yeah, of course Democrats want elections to go for 2 months. Anyway, look, here's the difficulty about Maine. Susan Collins is not exactly someone that Republicans are terribly enthused about, and for good reason. Bernie Moreno over the weekend, the Ohio senator, expressed that it was embarrassing Congress had been unable to pass the Save America Act, while countries like Colombia have incredibly accurate ways to hold safe and fair elections. Talking with Breitbart over the weekend, Moreno, who'd been in Colombia to observe their elections, spoke about how Colombia doesn't allow mail-in ballots, requires not only voter ID, but proof of national citizenship as well. He said it's kind of embarrassing from the perspective of Congress that we can't even pass the Save America Act. Let me lay it out how Colombia runs their elections. First of all, no mail-in ballots whatsoever. Colombia doesn't allow it. Single-day elections, you have to have proof of national citizenship, rather. When you vote, you got to have it with you. So it's not only voter ID, but 100% strict proof of citizenship. And if you don't have it with you, they don't even let you into the hall where you vote. All the ballots are paper ballots. The ballots are counted by hand. The results are delivered after an hour and a half after the polls close. They have election watchers that are there and vigilant. They have judges that are there disputing any claims that are made. He continued to explain that there had been around 750,000 election observers, volunteers, and roughly 13,000 from outside the country. It's an incredibly accurate way to run an election, says Moreno. My takeaway, I felt embarrassed for the United States of America. And as a senator, he said, I felt more humiliation, thinking that Congress can't even pass proof of citizenship and proof of ID to vote in American elections. And what we're seeing in California, where they're still counting ballots, it's completely insane. I couldn't agree more. And Susan Collins over the weekend happened to be one of the Republicans, one of four of them, that torpedoed an effort to get it passed again. Now, if you're not going to give Susan Collins, if you're not going to give Republicans a reason to get excited to turn out and vote for you, you're going to have the Nazi tattooed Graham Plattner as your next senator, because they're getting ready to spend a ton of money on him and promoting him. And look, it's very, very difficult, frankly, to get excited about Susan Collins. It's difficult to get behind her. It's difficult to defend her. And even so, here we are. I mean, she's maybe the best we've got. And that's frustrating, because we've got to get to a place where Republicans do better than just saying, at least we're not the Nazi tattoo guy. So meanwhile, while talking about Israel and combat generally, something over the weekend you need to be aware of: the Israeli Air Force conducted strikes on military targets in central and western Iran. The strikes in retaliation for an Iranian missile attack against Israel. It marks a new phase in a growing escalation that started Sunday morning. It's the first time Israel has struck Iran since the April 8th ceasefire. Iran had threatened to expand its attacks and target U.S. bases in the region if Israel retaliated. Further exchanges of fire could unravel the negotiations. A U.S. defense official said the U.S. military was not involved in the strikes. The official said Israeli strikes were relatively limited. So we'll continue to watch that. Meanwhile, Scott Bessent, Street Tough Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, intends to use Iran's assets for Gulf allies to rebuild. I love this. Treasury Department planning to use assets taken from the Iranians to help assist Gulf allies in their rebuilding process. CBS News citing a source from Bessent's office reports over the weekend that Iran's assets are set to be used by the department in assisting Gulf allies to recuperate after damage from Tehran. The department is planning to use any authority on hand for the accessibility of Iranian assets to rebuild and repair work linked to damage caused by Iran. So that's pretty cool. Happy to hear that. The Pentagon. This was something kind of interesting over the weekend. I don't know if you saw it. Mike Lee, who's a rock-ribbed constitutionalist and one of the guys really pushing hard to get the SAVE Act passed through the Senate. Mike Lee also happens to be a Mormon, and the only reason I bring that up is Mike Lee's a little disappointed with something going on over at the Pentagon right now. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth had previously criticized the large number of faith codes, saying the system was overly complex. Did you know that the Pentagon recognizes 211 different categories of religious affiliation? Did you even know that there was such a thing as 211 categories of religious affiliation? I did not. Anyway, the Department of Defense issued new guidelines on this and changed it to 31 instead of 211. Quite a cut. The change revises a policy established in 2017. The update was outlined in a May 20th memo. According to the memo, the changes were made to streamline the Department of War collection of religious preferences. The new list will provide chaplains with clear, readily available information that will better enable them to anticipate the religious support needs of service members and to provide religious support activities that align with service members. And here again, I only can lean on our esteemed producer, Aaron, and his time serving. I don't know how much you encountered this. Did you know that there were 211 different religious delineations while you were enlisted, Aaron, in the United States military? 211.
I did, because I was a religious program specialist. I served under chaplains.
Oh,
and
man, am I glad we tapped into this. I'd forgotten you told me this. So that seems impossible. How do you know 211 different religions?
Well, I didn't know it was that many specifically, but I did know there was quite a few. I mean, I specifically only learned how to set up services and support, a handful.
Whoa.
So I knew there were so many chaplains.
So like what kind of, just so people can understand this and why, do you think, well, let me ask you this, since you're not in anymore, do you agree with the Department of Defense streamlining this? Do you think 211 down to 31? Do you have any opinion on that, given what your work was?
Yeah. And I think it's to combat things like, wasn't one of I think one of the religions that was recognized was like Jedi stuff, and like another one was like the joke religion that was the spaghetti monster thing,
yes. So some of them were
people trolling
jokes.
True religions, trying to be like, well, if you can do this, then I could do this. So I understand where it's coming from a little bit, I think.
Guys like Mike Lee are upset because they took a bunch of faiths, I guess denominations and other things, Catholicism and the like, and they put them under the category of Christian, right? So, which is true. So there are a lot of different denominations within the Christian faith. They did not include Mormonism in that. They took the Mormon faith, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they made it its own line item instead of tucking it into Christianity. And so Mike Lee took exception with that. He said that the Mormon faith is every bit as Christian as any of the others. Now, I think there are a healthy number of Christians that would have a robust debate with the senator about that. The senator over the weekend was saying, you read the Book of Mormon, read it cover to cover, and you tell me that it's not every bit as Christian as everybody else. I mean, I have not read the Book of Mormon, to be clear. I have sat through a few lectures and seminars and sermons on Mormonism, and they're great people by and large. I have no qualms or quibbling. I'm not quibbling with the Book of Mormon or the Mormon faith. If that's their deal, that's their deal. God bless America, whatever. But as a Christian, it's a weird. They're not saying they're not acknowledging Mormons, by the way. At the Department of Defense. That's not my understanding. They listed, instead of 211, they listed 31. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is one of the 31, but they just didn't tuck it into Christianity, as I understand it. But anyway, just wanted to call your attention to that. That is one of the big controversies of the week. There is a stack today on energy that I wanted to call your attention to. One of the things that you may or may not know about, if you're in Virginia, for instance, I know you know about data centers, and probably you have heard about the great debate on data centers. In the Midwest, here in America's heartland, and you can read a lot about this at heartlandernews.com, data centers have become a flashpoint, a huge point of contention. And bottom line, here's what you're talking about. Hundreds, thousands of acres of farmland throughout the Midwest. Right now, row crops like corn and soybeans, not as profitable. A lot of farmers have decided the land that they're farming is more valuable just to sell it, frankly, than to grow anything on it. And so along come these big tech firms, and they're telling farmers in the middle of nowhere with these huge, huge acreages, hey, we really would like to build a data center here. And they stroke them a check. These farmers, I'm sure it's generational money. I mean, it's the kind of thing some of these farmers are seeing checks waved in front of them that could be money for generations of their family, probably. And so one can understand that a farmer would be tempted to sell his or her land to a data center developer. Problem is, they often plop up in unincorporated areas of a county where local county government is getting an earful from their residents around that farmland, or maybe in the town near that farmland, because what's the concern? The concern that these data centers are drawing from the water table. They're using up a tremendous amount of water and resources, and the concern that it's going to make everybody's energy costs go ever higher. That is a real worry amongst many in the Midwest right now about these data centers. So what do? You got farmers who own this land privately, lock, stock, and barrel. They can enter into a private transaction with a data center company, all they'd like. Can citizens weigh in to stop it? Well, perhaps if there's a draw on the energy grid, transparency is what is needed here. And data center people who are building them, they're not really being very transparent with the community. However, what they are promising is not only generational wealth, perhaps to the landowner, they're also promising in taxes that they'll pay to the county, huge sums of money. I mean, I've read and heard from some public officials that talk about these rural school districts and rural towns that are kind of dying on the vine. They could be infused with money, millions of dollars for years to come if these data centers are allowed to come in. So it's quite a catch-22. Making utilities more expensive, drawing utilities from smaller communities, that's a bad thing. They're concerned about water quality. They're concerned about noise and light pollution and other things, all understandable concerns. And big tech has not done a great job allaying those concerns, but there's a huge potential windfall of revenue coming into these communities. That's something a lot of elected leaders can't ignore. So this is going to be a debate for our time, because AI is only getting, in fact, I read a UN report over the weekend. This is hilarious. Are you ready for this? And this is coming to a theater near you soon, is going to be a discussion about AI use and the responsible use of AI. Aaron, you're going to love this. You use AI in your work, don't you? You use it, I guess, technically, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very frequently.
Let me ask you this. This is true. I read this from a UN report that they're obviously the more you put into AI, the harder AI has to churn, the more energy is burned to produce whatever the thing is. So if AI was first used kind of like Google or whatever, or if I enter hey, give me the answer to, what was President Garfield's favorite ice cream, whatever, and so AI, so you use it like Google or something, or maybe to rewrite a paper, or, hey, write a paragraph on, D-Day. AI would spit that out. But now people are putting in whole videos, right? People are taking video, they're taking audio, they're taking big, huge projects, and they're putting it to AI to spit it out. It takes more and more energy. So the UN report has just been released talking about all the energy that's being used and how much of the world's energy is going to go to AI projected by 2030. And they're saying it's going to be like 40% of global energy will be used in AI related work, simply because the volume of it and how hard people are making it work. And so there was someone quoted in this story. Get ready for this, Aaron. I'm just warning you, if you make your living, if you in your career are using AI, get ready, coming to a theater near you soon. Bureaucrats who say we might need to start looking at economy of words and kind of policing what you're putting into AI. So instead of saying something like, please look up the number of stoplights in Toledo, Ohio, you should just type number of stoplights, Toledo, Ohio. Take out the extra words, because every extra word you use is more energy burned in AI. I'm not making this up. It sounds ridiculous, but it's actually what this report said over the weekend from the AP. Word economy. So coming soon, I would predict, Aaron, if this continues and people use AI at the volume they are, faster and more, they'll start policing how much you can put into it, or maybe charging you for it. So you already pay maybe for an AI service. I can imagine someday soon you will start paying for the volume of words you use, or paying for what you're putting into it. Like you've got to pay a tiered system. I bet that's coming. What do you say? It's like toll roads. I think that's what's coming for AI.
Yeah, I mean, like Anthropic already sort of does that with their tiered plans and like X amount of usage.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't use enough of it. I use ChatGPT and that's about it.
And I have read like those. Are you a fan of The Office?
Oh,
Do you
yes.
ever watch it?
I've
so
watched some of it.
when Kevin tries to sound like a caveman by removing words, and I have read legit articles like people do that to try and save on usage. Like, you know, you save 0.1% of your usage on every prompt. That means, wow, I have extra usage at the. I don't know. I just don't bother with it.
This is going to be. And you're younger than me, but I remember when recycling came on strong, and recycling was the huge thing. And everybody said, you know, here's the, you need a bin for the glass, you need a bin for the plastics, you need a bin. And then people started figuring out that it all wound up in the dump anyway, by and large.
Yeah.
Recycling went to, this is the new recycling. That's what it is.
I mean, that still happens here at my condo. We have a dumpster for recycling and a dumpster for trash. Everybody is up in arms about if they see a trash bag, you know, and then the same truck comes, empties one, and then empties the other and drives away.
That's right. It's just something to make people feel good. So it's all about control. So those of you who are AI enthusiasts, just know there are two issues. Number one, yes, it takes a tremendous amount of power. Two, that means it's going to take data centers. You're going to have to build these suckers. They need them. Where are you going to build them, though? So I'll wrap up today by saying big tech built so many data centers in Ireland that the sector uses a fifth of the country's electricity, more than all of Ireland's urban homes put together. For much of the past 3 years, the country barred new data centers to ensure its electricity grid could cope. And now Ireland is trying a new approach. Bring your own power. New data centers and expansions of existing facilities are welcome, but must have their own power plants on site or contracts for new, largely renewable sources of energy to be produced nearby. They can't just grab juice from the grid. Good. Yes. And that is what President Trump has been advocating for all along, that these data centers build their own kind of nuclear source for power. I'm for that. I think that's exactly appropriate. And that is what we should push for. If these people can create their own sources of power, they should. And if they can, as I understand, there are advancements now where water they can use in a recyclable way. Instead of just drawing new water and pumping out the old, they can actually just recycle the same water, like a swimming pool, and not have to draw new water. Look, it's undeniable we're going to need data centers. Where they're put, going to be a huge debate. How they're operated, going to be a huge debate. But what we don't want, if we're going to go this direction, and I know a lot of people hate AI, but a lot of people use it and use it to great effect right now, and it helps them right now a lot. I know a lot of people who use it and count on it. Here's what you don't want. If you're one of those that are using it and you count on it for your living, if this dynamic doesn't change, I can imagine a day very soon where you're going to be told you have a limit to the amount of AI usage that you can do in the course of a day or a week. And then you'll have to pay more if you'd like access to it. Sort of a toll road for AI. It's coming. Sure, as I sit here, that nothing's ever free. So the more access we can grant to it, the more power we can provide for it, the more power that is self-sustaining by these companies, the more these companies explain to communities the benefits of them. There needs to be a heavy discussion about this right now. This kind of I'm for it, I'm against it thing that misses the point. It's not a simple matter of whether I'm for or against AI and data centers. It's here. So it's really not a debate. It's now, how's it going to be powered? How's it going to be used? And what's going to be the expectation? Got to start having some realistic conversations about it. I think the president is deeply interested in that. We are too, and we'll continue to cover it here. So we'll continue to stay on top of that and many, many other stories. If you go to heartlandernews.com today, you will read great news stories each day and all week long, written by fantastic journalists from here in America's heartland. Meanwhile, be sure to keep up to date on all the latest news throughout the week at not just heartlandernews.com, but as we publish this show here. Subscribe to the Heartlander News channel here on YouTube. Give us a like. Hope you'll give us a comment. Love to hear your thoughts. And we'll see you back here next time on Heartlander News.